Okay, welcome to this video where we will be checking the answers for test number 6 from IELTS academic book number 12. Please do not watch this video until you have attempted this test. It's not going to benefit you in any way if you just given the answers. So try your best to complete this test before you check the answers here. Okay, so let's start off with the first questions 1 to 3, which are over here. And the first one, it says a reference to characteristics that only apply to food production. Okay, and the answer for this one, it can be found essentially in the first paragraph here, because we're talking about two characteristics that distinguish food production from all other productive activities. So because of the word all other, we know that the word only, it applies to food production, so this one is the letter A. Okay. Then over here, number 2, a reference to challenges faced only by farmers in certain parts of the world. Oops. Okay. So we need to find something that talks about certain parts. And if you look over here, you'll find that in B it says farmers everywhere face major risks, right? Weather, climate change, price volatility. However, and here we've got the what we call honey lexis. However, farmers in developing countries must, in addition to these problems above here mentioned here, they must also deal with soil quality, rainfall, infrastructure, and all these extra things. And so these are the challenges that are faced only by the farmers in these developing countries, whereas these ones up here are faced by all farmers. Okay, so you can basically it's talking about all the things below this line here. And then for number 3, a reference to difficulties in bringing about cooperation between farmers. And so the key words here, difficulties and cooperation. And for this one, you actually have to go all the way down. This is unusual. Usually the test doesn't make you go this far down. Also, note how long this is. It's quite a long text, this one. You have to go all the way down to H. And it's talking about, when we look for cooperation, we're looking for words that are related. So cooperatives, obviously, groups, collective action, all of this relates to the word cooperation. And if we're looking for the word difficulties, we can go down here and see that it takes time and effort and money to organize. Okay, those are sort of difficulties, but if we look slightly ahead of that, we can see that this man, Gilton, warned that collective action does not come as a free good. So it does require these things to be overcome, these difficulties to be overcome. Okay, build trust, experiment, all these things. Okay. Okay, now we move on to questions 4 to 9. So we're going to look at the most important words within this one. So the financial assistance from the government does not always go to the farmers who need it most. Okay, so we're looking for poverty, poor, probably, or something like rich. Financial assistance is going to the more wealthy farmers. And if you look over here, we're looking at this person, Rokeya Kabir, commented in her essay that these have not compensated for the stranglehold exercised by private traders. In fact, and she carries on, studies show that 60% of beneficiaries, financial assistance, that's the word there, beneficiaries, that's not the same word. This is what I'm talking about, subsidies. Subsidies are financial assistance. And the beneficiary is somebody who gets the subsidy. So that means people, in this case, farmers. So the farmers who benefit from these subsidies are not poor, but actually rich landowners and non-farmer traders. So we've got this lady here, Kabir. So the first answer is D. Okay, from here. Farmers can benefit from collaborating as a group, and we saw this word collaboration, so it's probably down in H again where we were looking before, and it says here groups enhance market opportunities for small scale producers, reduce marketing costs, and synchronize buying and selling with seasonal price conditions. According to Murphy, collective action offers an important way for farmers to strengthen their political and economic power, to reduce their risk. Okay, so all of that is related to the word benefit here, and then the word collaboration. So this is talking about Murphy. So for this one, we've got B over here. And now number 6, financial assistance from the government can improve the standard of living of farmers. Okay, and for this one, we have something up here. If we look over here, Shagan Fan, director of the Research Institute, held up social safety nets, and public welfare programs. Okay, so that's financial assistance from the government. Both of them have that similar meaning. In Ethiopia, Brazil, and Mexico, as valuable ways to address poverty, deal with or address, similar meaning, among farming families and reduce their vulnerability to agriculture shocks. Okay, so for this one here, improve the standard of living relates to deal with poverty or address poverty. Okay, and so for that one, we have C. Okay, number 7, farmers may be helped if there is financial input by the same individuals who buy from them. That's the key word there, same individuals. Okay, because we heard a lot about farmers being helped by governments, but what about people who actually buy directly from the farmers? What if they gave them or helped them out financially when they needed it? And it's written over here. We've got this person, Sonali Bisht, who wrote that community-supported agriculture, so people who live in the same town or the same village as the farmer, where consumers invest in local farmers by subscription and guarantee a fair price, is a risk model worth more attention. Okay, and so this, it doesn't say definitely, but it may be. Okay, it's worth more attention. It's related there. So all of this relates to G, Sonali Bisht. Okay, and the word consumers, same individuals, community-related people. Okay, number 8. Governments can help to reduce variation in prices. Okay, and so this one is basically up here because we talked about the swings up and down of over here in D, the up and down movement of what's called futures trading, which is quite dangerous stuff, and it moves the price of goods up and down. Okay, and so have a look here. Sophia Murphy, senior analyst, which is when you first meet her, suggested that the procurement and holding, this means buying, procurement means buying, and holding of stocks by governments can help to mitigate wild swings in food prices, alleviating uncertainties about market supply. Okay, so this one again is B. Now notice you'll say, oh, B we've used in number 5 already. Well, look here. NB means very important. You may use any letter more than once. Okay, it's very important to read the rubric so that you are clear with how to answer these questions. Okay, number 9. Improvements to infrastructure, that's roads, railways, water, electricity, can have a major impact on risk for farmers. Okay, and this one is right just above here. Mr. Kwanze, president of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, argued that governments can significantly reduce risk, there it is, there's the word risk, it's the same word, for farmers by providing basic services, infrastructure. And he gives examples like roads, water, and food storage facilities, cold storage facilities to reduce losses. Okay, so for this one here, we have A. Okay. Okay, now we're moving on to questions 10 and 11, as well as questions 12 and 13. Okay, and it's asking for which 2 problems are mentioned which affect farmers with small farms in developing countries. Okay, so everything's talking about developing countries here, except for the first paragraph, where the second paragraph, where they mention all farmers. But what we need to look specifically for is small farmers with small farms. Okay, and so we can see here, it moves on to talking about smallholder farmers over here, and they must deal with adverse environments, both natural, in terms of soil quality, rainfall, etc. So these words, rainfall especially, and the suggestion that weather is, when they say rainfall, etc., means other things related to weather. Okay, and so we can talk about weather patterns here for this one here. Unable to get insurance is not mentioned. Lack of irrigation not mentioned. Lack of demand for locally produced food. There's lots of demand, so that's not the case. Having to sell their goods to intermediary buyers. Now this is where I was a bit confused, where I could find this one, because it's not A, it's not B, it's not C, but I had to really look for it. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, to the last page of this, you'll find the answer, and it's talking about this here. That's right. The market price volatility is often worsened by the presence of intermediary purchasers, buyers. So there's the word intermediary again. Okay, and notice this is sitting in a topic sentence. So if you were following the system that I've got in this course, you will have found this word intermediary, and you would have underlined it because it's a key word. So it will be quite quick for you to find this. Okay, and you might say, hang on, but this is talking about small farms. Now this is a bit tricky, because this is still related to what's being said in this paragraph here, and if you look, this paragraph is talking about small scale producers. Okay, so it links all the way back down here. And now if we look at questions 12 and 13, which 2 actions are recommended for improving conditions, okay, for farmers? And the answers for this one are also down here. This one we saw already, encouraging customers to take a financial stake in farming, and we saw it over here. Customers invest in local farmers, help them out financially in exchange for a percentage of profits or something like that. Okay, so that's sitting here, and then slightly above here, C, organizing a cooperation between the wide range of interested parties. Okay, and we're talking about a cooperation here, so producers, groups, it's not just farmers working together, but collective action groups. Okay, so it's not just farmers, but people who would benefit from the farmers surviving and everybody working together. Okay, so the key word there, a wide range of interested parties, including over here customers. Okay, so that's sort of connected with D. Okay, here it is. That's what I'm really looking for. All stakeholders, including business, government, scientists, civil society, all of that is a wide range of interested parties. It doesn't say anything about reducing food stocks. Attempt to ensure that prices rise. No. we want more stability for farmers. They don't want it any rising and fall, or too much rising and falling of prices. And making customers aware of the reasons, no, it's not mentioned. Okay, so you've just got these two here. Okay, now we're moving on to reading passage number 2. This is an example of a type of text that I probably would have started reading if I'd checked through the text first, because this I find more interesting than the previous text, and so I would like to get as many points on the board as possible. And so sometimes it's better to skip through, find a text that you find more interesting, because you'll be better able to get points on the board, and you'll get less frustrated perhaps with yourself if you try to do the easy questions first. Okay, so let's just have a look at the answers here. So for paragraph A, we've got this, basically it's his plan, what he planned to do, and the word plan relates to this word here, where have I put it, the aim. Okay, so this one here, the aim of the trip was to go and explore the remote hinterland of the west of Cusco. Okay, and this was in 1911. Okay, all right, so there's the keyword there, plan. Okay, now paragraph B, talking about how almost all travelers had left the river at this place and then taken the high pass across, but what he did was something different. He followed a track that had recently been blasted using dynamite to enable rubber production. Okay, so he used a different route, and therefore we've got a new route for number 6 over here. Then number 7, talking about Hispanians are not interested, and in fact he doesn't seem to be very interested either. He seems less keen on the prospect of climbing the hill. So the morning was dull, so not sunny, and wet, raining. So he wasn't very happy. He wouldn't have gone up there. He didn't really want to go up there, but he did in the end. And so we can see that this one here, it's lack of enthusiasm. He's not very interested in doing that. Okay, and then paragraph D, looking down here, he's talking about the discovery and how it seemed unbelievable, a dream, spellbound. So all of that relates to the sort of dramatic description of it, as if it was, he couldn't believe his eyes. And then paragraph E, and this one is in 1984, when he wrote this book, he said how amazed he was, but in fact in his diary, which was more, it was written at the time, obviously, was contemporaneous. It was more gradual appreciation of his achievement. He didn't realize what he'd actually discovered. And so there's 2 ways of looking at this, and it's mentioned in E. So we look over here and we can see different accounts, different descriptions of the same journey. Okay. And then with F, he came to write the National Geographic magazine. So he broke the story in that magazine. And what do you do with the magazine? You publish it. So that's where he publishes his theory. His theory, he thought that Manco the Great was the birthplace of the first Inca, and so that's his theory, and that's therefore number 7 because it's published in a magazine. And then the last one, G, this is an idea which has gained wide acceptance, so a lot of people believe this, and there we go, there's the word common belief. A common means most people. Okay, so there you've got, if you did well there, you've got already 7 points on the board with the text that maybe you find more interesting than the one above it. Okay, now we're going on to true, false, and not given questions. Number 21. Bingham went to South America in search of an Inca city. Okay, and the answer is true because his goal There's another word, plan and goal, actually related to the previous question. Goal, aim, plan. His goal was to locate the remains of a city called Vitkos. Vitkos, yeah. So that is true. Then he chose a particular route down this valley because it was the most common route. We know straight away that that's not the case, because most previous travelers had left the river and taken this high pass. He was the one who did an unusual one and followed this rubber track. So that's false, because it's not the most common. Bingham understood the significance as soon as he saw it. We know the answer from above that actually he didn't really understand, because over here, remember, he had a more gradual appreciation of his achievement. He didn't straight away understood how lucky he was to have discovered this. So that's false. And then Bingham returned to Machu Picchu in order to find evidence to support his theory. Well, here's the idea about that theory. Okay, and it goes on and on about it being the birthplace, and maybe it was a place where the Incas fled from the Spanish invaders. It's all here, but I can't find anything related to him returning. So he maybe did. It's very possible that he did, but it's not mentioned here. And if it's not mentioned here, even if you know for a fact, maybe you studied this man, and you know from university that he repeatedly went back, but it's not mentioned in the text. Okay, so the information given, not your world knowledge. Therefore, this is NG for not given. Okay, and then choose one word only. Okay, for this one here, the track that took Bingham down the valley was created for the transportation of, and we know this, we've highlighted it here, it's to enable the rubber to be brought up by mules. Mules are another way to say donkeys. Okay, so transportation, brought up, and so we know that this is rubber. They must have had rubber trees in the valley down in this area. Okay, and the next one, Bingham found out about the ruins of Machu Picchu from something who worked in the valley. So people knew about this, but they never said anything to anybody really. So who knew about these before even this Mr. Bingham character? And we can find it here. Where is it now? Here it is. His companion showed no interest in accompanying him up the nearby hill to see some ruins that a local farmer, Melchor, had told him about the night before. So this farmer had known about this for years, but he'd never really reported it. Okay, so the answer for this one is farmer. Okay, now we're moving on to reading passage number 3, the benefits of being bilingual. Bi, meaning two, so having two languages. Okay, observing the something of Russian English bilingual people when asked to select certain objects. And I remember this straight away, it was about the eyes. If we look for the word Russian English, we're studying eye movements. So observing the eye movements, two words are allowed, so not just the eyes. And there's an S there, so I couldn't just write eye, observing the eye. That's very unusual because most people have two eyes, so it must be the two words. Okay, don't forget the S. Okay, so observing the eye movements. Okay, and the results of this, the findings of this, bilingual people engage both languages simultaneously at the same time, a mechanism known as, okay, and so we need to look for this, what happens when both things are happening at the same time. And this is called, there it is, language coactivation. And this is one of the things you would have underlined when you were doing the preparation task for before you look at the questions. So you would have underlined this, so it would have popped out at you. Language coactivation. Okay, so this related to it says this phenomenon called language co-activation comes from studying eye movement, so they're related here. Okay. Now the next one is a test called something for focusing on naming colors. Now I remember colors down here, this in this paragraph, and again this word called, so it must be something that most people wouldn't know. It's a type of jargon. And here, this is the word Stroop task. I would have underlined that because it's capitalized. So people see a word and ask to name the color of the word's font. Okay, and so that is called a Stroop task. Okay, and the result, findings, bilingual people are more able to handle tasks involving a skill called, again, this thing is going to be a word that most people don't know. And trying to find it here. Okay, so there it is. For this reason, bilingual people often perform better on tasks that require conflict management. And then straight away it goes into giving an explanation. It doesn't say for example, but you must be able to understand that it goes from here to explain it straight away. A Stroop task or Stroop task if you want it to be Dutch. Okay, and so conflict management is the answer. Management. Okay, and then this is switching between tasks. Okay, and that's something down here. And when switching, there it is, sorry, here. Switching between two tasks, it shows that they are more quickly monolingual, they have better, there's the keyword, cognitive control. Okay, superior is another word for better. Sorry, this does this sometimes. Control. Okay, and we're just double checking. Two words. Remember, this is a hyphen, so it's not a problem. That's one word. So co-activation, language. Good. We've done all that. Okay. Okay. Now we move on to 32. With yes, no, not given. Remember, yes, no. These are the ones that agree with the claims of the writer, not factual things. Like true, false would be factual, and yes, no are the ones that look at the claims of the writer. Okay, what he believes, what he thinks, or she. Okay, so number 32, attitudes towards bilingualism have changed in recent years. Well, that's true, because over here, in the past, bilingual children are considered to be a disadvantage. However, and there's the word, some honey lexis, advances have allowed researchers to look more deeply, and they've shown that actually there are some clear benefits to being bilingual. So that is yes. Okay, bilingual people are better than monolingual people at guessing correctly what words will be before they're finished. And if you were paying attention, you might have heard or read the word tip of the tongue. Okay, now don't get mixed up with that. Tip of the tongue is I can't quite remember. I know the word. Maybe I know the first letter, or it sounds like, okay, but it's in my mind. I know the first letter, I just can't remember the whole word. That's called it's on the tip of my tongue. Somebody might say, it's on the tip of my tongue. I know the first two letters, but this one here, they are better than monolingual at guessing correctly what words are before they are finished. That suggests that somebody's giving you the first two letters and then you say the rest. Over here, for example, if you hear can, you will likely activate words like candy and candle. Okay. So it's related to this, but also here, because it says for bilingual people, this activation is not limited to a single language. So bilingual people and monolingual people are just as good as each other. Okay. Well, actually, it doesn't say just as good as each other. Bilingual, this activation is not limited to a single language. Okay, that's a valid point. So it's not actually given whether they are better or not. Okay, but we do know is that they are also good at it in another language. They're not just related. It's not just stuck with one language. In this case, English with the CAN, candy, candle. Okay, so it's not actually it's not explicitly said that bilingual people are better at this than monolingual. We can guess that they are because they can also do it in another language too. But it's not said here, so this is not given answer here. Okay. Number 34. Bilingual people consistently name images faster than monolingual people, and this is actually the opposite. There are some negative things of being bilingual here. For instance, knowing more than one language, being bilingual, can cause speakers to name pictures more slowly. Okay, so that's actually the opposite, because you've got the word faster, so it's the opposite. So N or no. Bilingual people's brains process single sounds more efficiently than monolingual people in all situations. Okay, the key word here is all. Look out for words like all. Okay, and we're looking for single sounds, so here we've got simple speech sounds. Okay, and so bilingual people's brains process simple speech sounds more efficiently. When monolingual and bilingual adolescents listen to simple speech sounds without any intervening background noise, they show highly similar brainstem responses. Okay, when researchers play the same sound to both groups in the presence of background noise, however, the bilingual listener's neural response is considerably larger. Okay, so yes, when there's background noise, this is true, but there's the trick. In all situations, and there it's saying they are very similar. So this is no. Oops. No. Okay. Number 36. Fewer bilingual people than monolingual people suffer from brain disease in old age. And over here we found the word brain disease. Okay. It's something like, surprisingly, the bilinguals' brains had more physical signs of disease. Okay. Even though their outward behavior and abilities were the same. Okay. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one. I'm not sure if I totally agree with this one here, and I would understand if you were confused. But it says that there are physical signs of disease, but not actual disease, as in their behavior and their abilities were the same. Let's just, sorry, I've just seen something here. I just want to read this. In a follow-up study, researchers compared the brains of bilingual and monolingual patients matched on the severity of Alzheimer's symptoms. Okay. Hang on. So going backwards here. In a study of 200 patients with this disease, patients reported showing initial symptoms of the disease an average of 5 years later than monolingual patients. Okay, so they delayed the initial symptoms. Okay, so this is still tricky, because what they're saying is that there are physical signs of the disease on the brain, but there are the symptoms of the bilingual patients are not clear. They're not as clear as they are in monolingual patients. Okay, even though the signs of disease are actually worse. They had more physical signs of disease. But here, fewer bilingual people than monolingual people suffer from brain disease in old age. Now, that's the key word here is fewer, as in you're going to give a number, a percentage, for example. So 39% of monolingual people have Alzheimer's when they're in their old age, and 42% of bilingual. But there's no percentages here. Okay, so now that I think about it, it's a bit clearer. The key word here is fewer. There's no comparison in terms of percentages. It's just talking about the results of this study of these 200 patients. So this is a not given. It could well be true, but this keyword helps us to know that it's not given. This information is not available to us. Okay, now let's move on to the last 4 questions. An example of how bilingual and monolingual people's brains respond differently to a certain type of non-verbal auditory input. So it's something about sounds that are non-verbal, and we've got all these words here, can, candy, etc. So it's not talking about that. It must be talking about this. Again, the simple speech sounds, t, k, b. Okay, so they don't. There's no information being carried in those sounds. Okay, so this must be talking about D here. And talking about an example, so here, starting here, when they do this, they show, okay, and so it's an example. Then a demonstration of how a bilingual upbringing has benefits even before we learn to speak. And I remember this is down here with the babies. Something about this 7-month-old babies, so it must be G. And then 39, a description of the process by which people identify words that they hear. So this is talking about a process of how they identify. And if we, let's keep that one there. I want this to go up. If we go to the top here, we can see this process here. So when we hear a word, we don't hear the entire, sequential order. All of this is talking about the process. Okay, and the key word there is process, so it must be B. And then some negative consequences. We saw this down here. So they cause speakers to name pictures more slowly. So that's C. Okay, so remember, you would have to have moved your answers over to the orange colored answer sheet before the end of this exam, so don't ever forget to do that. You're not given the 10 minutes like you are in the IELTS listening exam. You must move your answers over to the answer sheet within the time that you're given, so within that 1 hour. Okay, so what I would recommend is move the answers over every time you finish one section. So there's 3 sections in the reading exam, so you move them over after each section. Okay, so this is your first IELTS test for some of you, and I think it would be a good idea for you to have a look at what grade you would have got. Okay. Oh, sorry, I've gone far too up here. So if let's find some space at the top here, and we'll use this space here. So it's out of 40, and you need to work out what your grade would be, and I'll show you the internet website where it'll give you the grade out of 9. Okay, so say for example you got 32, right, as an example. Right, let's go to the website. Okay, so the website is ieltstutorials.online/score-calculator. There's a number of other ones, but this is the one I like. So it's a reading. We're going into the academic, and say for example you got 32 out of 40. your calculation would give you a 7 out of 9, which is good. Okay, and let's put that back here. So that would be a 7 out of 9. Okay, and obviously that would be for many universities, if you're doing undergraduate courses, that would be enough. But if you're trying to do a master's degree, they might require 7.5. Okay, unlikely to be anything more than a 7.5. I've never heard anyone asking for an 8 out of 9, but you never know. It might be the case for some very prestigious universities. Okay. If you have any questions, please use the space down below where you will have a chance to write in any comments, and either me or another student who is keen can answer the question. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.